Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Delivering a Better Holiday Email Experience with Live Data. I'm going to give everyone a minute or two to log in and get settled in BrightTalk, and then we will start the webinar. All right, hello again. If you've joined the webinar in the last minute, my name is Leah. I'm on the marketing team here at Movable Ink, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar, all about how to have a successful holiday season with email and live data. So I'm going to take a minute to introduce today's speakers. On the phone with me, we have Scott Cornell and Mike Dietz. So Scott is based out of Perry's office in upstate New York, and as head of the Perry strategy team, he has over 25 years of experience assisting clients in leveraging their big data for multi-channel revenue maximization. And my colleague Mike is a solutions consultant based here in the New York City headquarters of Movable Ink. With over 10 years of email experience, Mike is the resident Movable Ink platform expert, and he regularly works with our sales and partnerships teams. So before we get started, just going to go over a few housekeeping items while you guys are reading the agenda. So you should be hearing audio right now. So just make sure that your volume is on and turned up within the BrightTalk panel. And if you have any questions for our presenters, please feel free to submit them at any time throughout the presentation. It's over on the right side of your BrightTalk panel. And that way we can answer them during our Q&A that we have coming up at the end of the webinar. We're also recording today's session, and we'll be following up with the recording and slides in the next few days. And finally, don't forget to join the conversation on Twitter. So you can mention us at Movable Ink and at Perry Ink and use hashtag holiday email when you post. With that, I will turn it over to Scott.
Thank you very much, Leah, and good afternoon to everybody, or good morning if you're on the West Coast. Let me just advance the slide here, and what we wanted to talk through is just a few things about your data, and what I really challenge everybody to do is think big about data, at least think big about what data you should be capturing. Hopefully to this point you've been gathering information about your customers from the minute they've signed up, but obviously if you're here listening about email, you already have an email address and hopefully you have a name. Hopefully there's some demographic and also geographic information. And then also just from that engagement standpoint, obviously we want to make sure that everybody is very sensitive about that last time that somebody has opened and or even clicked through on an email. And I'm hoping that all the folks on the line have actually been doing a great job of also tagging the initial sign up. So what source did they come from? Where did they come in from? because that might also drive what folks are expecting out of your email program as well. And so we also look at it that what data is available that can drive that live data experience. I know the holidays can be a stressful time, especially from a retail environment. Sometimes you see that sales are not going the way they should be, or maybe they're accelerating a little bit too fast versus your inventory needs. And that's, I think, a great spot that you can start to really leverage that live data. So as you look at the more advanced data elements that you might have, we all have purchase history and product affinity most likely handy. The question then is, how can we actually get that to power emails? Another thing that I see a lot of in terms of dealing with our clients, we have many clients that are doing an abandoned cart email, and that's great, and there's great response in those, great opens, great click-through rates on those. But one of the things that we often see is the browse behavior is actually being left behind. And that's one of those that I really, again, want to challenge the audience to see how can they go after the browse behavior. And we'll talk through a few of the examples later on in today's webinar of what folks are doing with that and also what the lift might be on that. Inventory levels, I think, is another huge one. So if you're not leveraging a product feed into your environment right now that's tied in with your email, I find it very frustrating from the standpoint of if you're ever messaged a promotion and then the inventory is no longer available for that. We're going to show you a few different ways that you can actually swap that out, et cetera, but also making sure that even at the time of open, not necessarily at the time of send, but at the time of open, that inventory levels are checked, and if something's out of stock, you can actually suppress that as well. Another one that we'll walk through today is shipping information. So I think having that shipping information data, whether it's any of the carriers out there, having that brought back into your system and being able to leverage that in emails is hugely powerful as well. I will say that as we've been working with Movable Ink for quite a while, some of the things that they're able to bring to the table, and I just love it being a data guy or a data geek at the end of the day, is they bring so much more to the table than just the opens and clicks, et cetera. What they're actually able to tell at the time of the open is what device is actually being used to open that. And so think about it, if we're all living in this responsive world or the mobile first world, imagine, if you will, if you could actually present your content just based on what device is opening that up. Another thing is Movable Ink is able to assist in terms of that actual geolocation of the subscriber at the time of open. Maybe not necessarily will they be able to tell you that a customer is sitting at home or they're sitting at the office at this time, but you should be able to figure out at least the proximity, especially if you have brick and mortar locations, how close those folks are when they're opening to your actual brick and mortar location as well. And if they're far away, all the better. So let's make that content dynamic to push them to definitely purchase through the website versus potentially pushing them, if they're out there on the Black Friday, pushing them to your store because they're already in the mall. Another thing that they can bring to the table is weather conditions. Another great one that we find is just the ability to leverage web merchandising that you already have. So imagine, if you will, you've already merchandised up your homepage, but you want to also potentially promote that on your website, but you don't want to repeat the work. We're going to walk through that one as well. Another great area that Movable Ink and data that they can bring in as well is the social content. So your Instagram, your Twitter, et cetera, even Pinterest can come across into the emails as well. So with that, what I'd like to do is hand it over to Mike, and he's going to talk through the Movable Ink portion of this, and I'll be interjecting along the way as well.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. So hi, everybody. Mike here. So even just kind of taking a step back for those that are unfamiliar with Movable Ink, as you're seeing on this screen right here, we pioneered the space back in 2011. And we're an experience engine which really empowers marketers to connect with their customers. Again, we're primarily focused on email here, so we can seamlessly connect your subscribers between moments, places, and devices. Let's move ahead here. I think by now we all kind of understand and know that email is the gold standard for ROI. For every dollar spent on email, the average return is a little over $44. But it's also important to note that, with contextual email, that ROI can absolutely more than double when you're using, contextual elements that will help, power your emails. So how can you actually stand out this holiday season in what's already a crowded inbox? In comparison to, general emails, ones that are, typical marketing blasts, ones that were based on relevancy and personalization actually saw 18 times more revenue, 3 times higher click-through rates, 39% increase in opens, and 28% fewer unsubs, which are all pretty staggering numbers. So at this point, I really just kind of want to dive into some real-life examples on how this can be applied to really what we're talking about here today. So as Scott was alluding to earlier, the ability to do live order tracking within your emails. We can feature a live update of where that package is along the life cycle, and this will obviously help reduce calls to customer service centers since the email is always updated, showing the customer exactly where their order is. The same concept can actually also be applied to live shipping dates. So, coming up with the holidays, we know that there are certain dates that, the tracking companies have to abide by. We can help dynamically update those dates in real time, so you'll always be able to message your customers and let them know how many days they have left to guarantee that their order is going to be there in time for the holidays. Also, kind of going down to the bottom of the email here that we're featuring, we know that these shipping confirmation emails and these transactional emails are always going to typically yield a high open rate. So we really feel that this is kind of a perfect opportunity where you can actually leverage some recommendations that are maybe going to coincide with something that somebody has already ordered. And I think it's another important thing to note here too, that we can also optimize or actually automate the content of these recommendations through our concept of web cropping. And one thing, if folks online aren't familiar with what a web crop is, it's essentially our ability to go out to any website, your customer-facing website, or it could be a privately hosted website. And we're going out there and basically just taking a snapshot of a given area based on a number of different things. And this can be done, just through you pointing us to a URL, or we can even leverage an API, maybe that's connected directly to an inventory feed, and then feature items that are relevant based on, a purchase. And this is really going to make sure that your transactional emails are evergreen, they're always up to date, and it's really going to make sure that, every time you open up that transactional email or that email where we're featuring a web crop, you're always going to have something in that email that is in stock and ready to be purchased.
And Mike, if I can just jump in for a quick second here as well, just some information or stats that we've seen when including that live order tracking, especially the shipping notification and it's on its way. We've definitely seen where our clients have seen a decrease in the customer service contacts that are reaching out, in particular, where's my product, where's my shipment, et cetera. So some of them reporting up to 20% decrease in those types of contacts. And I think one of the other things that I can't stress enough is, here you've got live order tracking. What's the number one thing that you do when you receive an email and it has your tracking number? You're going to be clicking out to the UPS site or the USPS or the FedEx site. Very rarely does a customer actually come back in to that email and look at the content in there. The beauty of being able to pull this live order tracking right into the email is you don't lose them anymore. So it's much more of a chance that they're actually going to be clicking on that cross promotion, that upsell potential inside of the email. So I think we've seen it work great. I think it's a great opportunity for folks out there as well.
Awesome, thanks, Scott. So another one we'll move into here is kind of, along the same lines of, the browsing behavior and live inventory, right? So with our ability, or I should even take a step back there and say, most marketers are obviously going to tell you that their abandoned cart and browse programs are oftentimes their most successful. So, your customer's online behavior is absolutely an indication of intent and kind of clue you in on their interests and what their path to purchase looks like right now at this very moment. More times than not, there is a bit of a lag when you're sending out these abandoned cart emails. Something might also sell out too. But with our ability to leverage that real-time inventory, we're going to make sure that any time that somebody browses an item or a category, we can actually feature those items or something that's in stock directly in the email whenever they open up. So whether they open up a day after abandoning, 3 days after abandoning, it's always going to be evergreen. Also, another thing I think worth mentioning in this example that you can see here on the hero image is the way that Movable Ink can actually take the standard mail merge of first name to a completely new level. With our ability to personalize images using historic or profile information like first name, you have complete creative control on how you'd like to display this kind of information to your customers. So the days of using, standard web-safe fonts and solid colored background images whenever you want to bring in somebody's first name are well behind us at this point, and we can really kind of, bring that experience directly to the user in a really creative and engaging way.
And I'm still amazed, Mike, if I can just for a second, I'm amazed in how many folks still don't have an abandoned browse email going out, whether it's a standalone or actually even leveraging that data inside of more of a batch and blast and just trying to bring that relevancy in. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I would just say that as you're looking at your data, if you're only running an abandoned cart, take that volume of how many abandoned cart emails that you're sending, and typically we see between 5 and 8 times the volume potential if you were to do an abandoned browse email. Doesn't mean you have to do a standalone email for that, but much like in this example, you can integrate that abandoned browse right inside of more of a batch and blast email. So thanks, Mike.
Cool. All right, and I got 2 more. So moving into social feeds. So we're really seeing that email is a great way that you can kind of tie together all the different social networks. And with our ability to feature live feeds, this is a great way that you can show user-generated content. You can also feature all that great content that your social teams are probably working so hard to post on a regular basis. As you can see in this one here, we're featuring a live Instagram feed, but we can also feature feeds directly from Twitter and Pinterest. You can really set this up to kind of look and feel exactly how you'd like. In terms of layout, we can pull in content directly from a handle that you'll pre-approve, obviously. And then we can also even go out and feature content that is going to be based around a specific search term or a hashtag. So we're seeing, great results when, you have a current contest going on, or maybe you want to promote some kind of a new product through a hashtag. We can certainly feature that within the email so that folks can actually see their name somewhat in the limelight here. And the last one that I have for you today is our ability to actually serve up a live poll within your email. And this is something relatively new to our offering, but we're seeing great results here in terms of engagement with the email. And it's a great way that you can gamify it and obviously entice a click here. So simply propose a question, an open-ended question to your users, and give them a couple selections to choose from. We can then take them to any page that you specify, and then actually update the email with the live results after they close out and reopen, of course. Just letting them know, hey, we noticed you voted, here are the live updates. And then I think the most important thing to take away from this slide here is that you can obviously create a higher level of personalization by sending a follow-up email. Since we're recording that click at Movable Ink, we can then pass that directly back to you, and then you can ask kind of an open-ended question here, who is the hardest to shop for? If you click family, chances are we know that you have a family, so why not promote some family-oriented, attire within the next email, and just kind of going along the block here, and just really being able to understand something about a user that you might not necessarily already have on file with your customers.
And Mike, just to add to that, a few of the examples that I've used over the years is just if we have a client in the past that is a vineyard client, and their biggest thing when they were just getting a new customer on board was they wanted to really learn more about what that customer was interested in. So imagine, if you will, an email instead of the family, coworkers, and friends, but it is, what are you most interested in shopping for? Is it the white, is it the red, or is it the bubbly? And the same thing with some of our apparel clients in the past as well. We have asked that question of, what are you most interested in shopping for? Is it the men's, the women's, the kids, or the household, et cetera? And again, I can't reiterate enough how much power there is in terms of that next step of the email and being able to leverage what you just learned from the customer in a rather creative way. So what we've seen typically is those click-through rates on those follow-up emails, once they have been personalized based on that polling, is that they're about 3 times the click-through rate. So relevancy and reacting to what somebody has told you definitely works, to say the least. So, and I think from there, what we wanted to do is walk through just a little bit of getting buy-in in your organization. So let me see if I can advance the slide here. And what we're looking at is what are the questions and how do we provide you a checklist of actually being able to go to your management and getting the approval to move forward with really just starting to leverage that live data. So let's get through here. A few of the first things that we always mentioned before is really make sure that you document all of your data. And I would challenge you to think big, dream big about the data. You might not have it all available to you today, but more likely than not, you've got the customer data available, you've got inventory data available, and you've got product and shipping information available. But if there's additional data that you have dreamt about using, don't lose that dream. Keep that documented. It might not be something you start off with right away, but it might be something that you can move towards in the future as well. So put it in the parking lot, but don't forget where that parking lot is. Another thing that we find very useful in terms of helping clients through this process is providing a few sample customer paths. So if we had this data and we could do live data and at the time of open, what would those look like? And I'm hoping that the examples that Mike had walked through prompt some interest, some creativity, and also some great ideas in terms of, yes, wouldn't it be great if we could do that? Another on our checklist is just really making that list of necessary resources. Obviously, you'll have the internal team members that will be involved with that. There will be the tool cost, but also think about the creative. And one of the things that we didn't touch on in the examples we had walked through, but one of the great powers of Movable Ink is the ability to do A/B testing of content in real time. So if you wanted to put two different creatives out there, be it, let's say, a half off creative versus a 50% off, and see which one actually works better, through Movable Ink, you can actually have that go out, have it read the results in real time. Oh, by the way, these are reading the results at the time of open. And the beauty of it is you don't have to deploy your emails later on. At the time of open, Movable Ink will actually present the winner after you've actually determined that winner. So again, it reduces a little bit of the headaches, at least in terms of sending out some of these A/B splits and then reading the results and then sending out the remainder, et cetera. So I don't want to discount that at all. Next on our checklist is really analyzing your metrics, be it from the previous holiday season or even your the year throughout. And what are your open rates and your click-through rates? What are your conversions? And I'd really ask you to seek what is your revenue per click, because granted, Movable Ink can impact everything once somebody has opened up, but this is all about how do we get more folks to click through on the email once they have opened. And I think one of the things there is as you then become, as your customers become used to seeing the content, they're also going to see greater value from your emails as well as come to expect that. So there'll be hopefully greater engagement along the lines as well. So next on the checklist of getting the buy-in is just providing a forecast of how that live data will impact your key metrics. We're hoping that you'll see higher engagement. We have seen that across all the clients that we've worked with on this to date. You'll see the increased conversions. And as we talked about that customer support and how you could actually reduce some of the costs and the contacts just by providing more of that data right up front to the customer. I think there's a great opportunity there as well. And as you're looking at that forecast, hey, if I can provide a 10% lift in my current click rate, what does that do? And you're assuming that you're going to keep that same click to revenue ratio. What does that do to my bottom line? And I think that's a key thing just to talk about as you're going through this whole process of the checklist. Finally, outlining the impact of live data, and I touched about this a little bit before, is just that long-term impact. So as this becomes part of that standard customer experience, they're going to be looking forward to your email. You're not going to be lost in the clutter. They know that the emails that come from you are going to be that much more targeted to the customer. They're going to be, let's call it even a specialty or almost a micro-targeted campaign. So you'll see greater customer satisfaction. And again, as Mike had pointed out, with these Movable Ink emails, you're going to see a higher engagement, but also I think just as important is that lower unsubscribe rate as well. So you're combating that potential negative lifetime value. And with that, what I'd like to do is turn this back over to Leah and see if there's any questions for our Q&A time.
Yeah. So first up, we have a question about social media and pulling those feeds into email. So the question is, how do you filter out any negative or potentially inappropriate posts so that they don't show up in your email?
I will be more than happy to take that one. So we do have the capability at Movable Ink to filter out for bad words. We have a little checkbox that you can check, and by checking that box, we will essentially not show anything that falls on our lovely list of 10 pages worth of curses, variations of curse words, and other curse words that I didn't even know were curses. So rest assured, we will not show any of that within the email. That being said, though, people do have concern over negative sentiment, which is something that we unfortunately can't filter out for, but we are piped in directly with several different social media curation companies like Curalate and Olapic, to name a couple. So if you are leveraging them as a current partner, we are already synced up with them, so we can leverage that content directly via their API and make sure that anything with the negative sentiment ultimately has to get approval from the brand side.
Cool. All right, next up, so the question is, do emails with multiple contextual elements outperform emails with a single element? So I don't know, I think you two can speak from different kind of client examples and emails that you're aware of, but.
I'll jump in first, and then I'll pass it over to you, Scott. But from my experience from being here at Movable for over 2 years, I would say definitely multiple elements are going to obviously increase engagement. You can obviously kind of tell that when you open up an email if there's multiple different things going on that we're powering that are personalized to the individual user. That's way more effective than just using a single element. And I'll just go to the old example of just using a static countdown timer, or not really a static countdown timer, but a streaming countdown timer. So, using one single countdown timer is great. It might help drive a little bit of urgency, but, I think it's important to note that, since we have this, ability to target content based on time, how do you want to measure or kind of message your users once the timer reaches 0? So, with Movable Ink, you have the ability to actually swap out that timer once it reaches 0 and show something else. Maybe saying, hey, you missed this great deal, but click back on our website because there's always great things going on. Or we could even just collapse it and make it look like that nothing's even there. So the ability to use those multiple different elements within the email should ultimately end up outperforming, I think, a regular email. Anything you want to add there, Scott?
And I would echo that absolutely. And one of the things I would just say is, you can always go out there, and I always encourage all clients to test, and test again. So test the two. If you're thinking about having 2, 3 different components in there, test it all together, measure that, but also at the same time be measuring those 2 or 3 elements separately and just see what the ultimate click-through rate is on those. But more often than not, and there's always an exception to it, but more often than not, we have seen where they have multiple contextual areas, which means just greater relevance to the customer, that you're going to get a much higher click-through rate. So great question, though.
Great. Next up, the question is, are there any delays in pulling this live data into an email?
Not from our end. We're really set up great from an infrastructure standpoint. This uncanny ability that our engineering team and tireless efforts that our engineering team has done to really create an infrastructure to support these different requests, and millions of requests, I should say, really speaks to our team here. So with our content, you're not going to experience any kind of lag or delays. That's just how we work. I think if we did have lags, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. We probably wouldn't even be in business today. So to say that there's a lag, I would not say that. It's just all of our content is going to load, as normal or even quicker than a typical image would in your normal email.
Great. And then one final question, which I think ties everything up really nicely. So a bunch of different types of capabilities were mentioned, a bunch of different sort of types of emails. Is there any one in particular, or maybe a few, that seems to be the most popular or most trendy feature that's being used this year?
From my standpoint, from what I've been seeing, live polling has been a real sticky point with our customers as of late. So kind of going back to that example of asking your customers a question, and then we're going to update it, seems to be really hitting it off well with a lot of our clients. And then I would also just kind of harp on the web crop. I think the web crop is by far the most powerful arrow in our quiver, so to speak, here at Movable Ink's offering. So our ability to leverage that information that you already have approved and created that is currently sitting on your site and being able to pull it into the email is just going to help everything when it comes to approvals, the amount of time spent on production, and then obviously resulting in a better customer experience for each person, because they're always going to see something relevant that's either in stock or personalized to them at the time of open.
And I would say the same thing. I might put them in a little bit of a different order, but we have the same number 1 and number 2. It's almost like the Exacta. Let's put it that way. If you box the Exacta, you're all set here. So that being said, I think a lot of folks are resource strapped potentially, and just the ability to do that web crop or the web scrape, I think, is just huge. So you're making the work that you've done from a merchandising standpoint just work for you again in really effortless fashion. And going back to the polling, I think there's just such value because, again, the data that you're capturing on there, you can write that back into your system as well and use that not only for that initial follow-up, but going forward as well, and just helps you get a better picture of what that customer not necessarily looks like, but what they're looking for. And I don't think you can underestimate the value of getting that self-reported information. So.
Great. Well, with that, we are going to wrap up. If you're curious to learn a little more about holiday email trends, there are a few attachments included in this webcast, so feel free to check those out. One is an infographic, and we have a retail readiness report available as well. But thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.